Real Estate Insider Podcast, the show where we cut past the headlines and talk to the people out there actually doing deals. I'm your host, Jared Sawyer. I've been in mortgages for the last 22 years. And one thing I've learned in this is investors think differently. They're not just asking, can I buy a house? What they're asking for is, how do I use real estate as an asset to build wealth, lower my tax bill, and create options in my life? On my side of Mortgage Solutions, we see that play out every single day. W-2 earners trying to figure out how to furnish rentals, take tax advantages, cash flow, and really what the hell to do in a market that feels uncertain. Rates move, headlines scream, and a lot of people freeze right when they should be making smart moves. That's why I'm pumped to have on today's guest, Mason. Mason isn't just doing big volume in real estate. He's doing it with intention. He's built a business working with residential investors in spaces like single family, multifamily, and especially furnished rentals. And he's kind of obsessed with one simple question: how many real conversations am I having with my clients and future clients every single day? So if you're an agent who wants to serve investors at a high level, or you're a W-2 income earner wondering how you can get rentals furnished, take advantage of tax strategy, and fit all this into your life, this episode's going to be for you, and it's going to be very practical to put to use. So without further ado, Mason, thank you so much for coming on. Just so you guys who don't know, Mason, who's quietly built a really impressive business, about 38 transactions and roughly 38 million in volume over the last 12 months, which is just mind-blowing, man. He's also a one-man show, and he specializes in helping investors, especially W-2 income earners, leverage rentals and create smart strategies to build wealth for their family. So you're going to want to listen to this. Mason, it's good to see you, man. Thanks for jumping on today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Let's start with your story. I think it'd be important to kind of get the genesis behind, how this all started for you. Kind of walk me through what got you started in real estate and then kind of finding your niche in this.
Yeah, I think when I really think about how it all began, it began with a desire to invest in real estate one day. And I think that's often you hear a podcast, read a book, maybe hear it from a friend, or all the above, like I did, of the power of real estate investing, especially as you're starting out in your professional journey, getting into the workforce, graduating college, getting your first couple W-2s. And so I was kind of like a mesh of talking with a friend, listening to a Bigger Pockets podcast that I think was introduced to me. I don't even remember how I came about that the first time. And it got me excited about this idea of real estate investing. And we were just getting into 2019, kind of the COVID boom of real estate. So it was definitely mainstream media headlines, home prices are going up. And I was like, how do I get involved in this? I've got no money to invest in real estate. I'm not thinking about buying a house anytime soon. So how do I at least start just learning more and educating myself and maybe even participating in it? And that's what led me to getting my real estate license. And since that, because I already liked the investment side of real estate, I kind of started marketing towards real estate investors. And 5 years later, here we are, got a couple properties and continuing to service real estate investors across the country.
Right on, man. So at what point did you kind of start realizing, okay, I'm not just doing like a transaction or a deal necessarily, but I'm actually starting to build real estate investors that are focused on doing business with me, kind of as a group, or setting it up in transactions so that you're teaching people how to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the confidence you start to gain as you're just like seeing almost case study after case study with your clients. So that when you're talking to someone new, it's like, hey, we just did this 6 months ago. Here's the actual case study. Here's my client's property. And you're starting to educate the investor on what you have legitimately just done and the numbers behind that. And I think that not only helps you learn, because I'm learning from my clients just as much as they're learning from me, because they're maybe trying new strategies, new locations, even going through different problems that I haven't gone through. So just each transaction, I feel like, builds your confidence and builds your momentum to then be able to meet someone new, now have 5 years under your belt, and be like, all right, what are you wanting to do? Here's what someone in your situation has done previously. Here's what you could do. And that's obviously super valuable for someone who's, just getting into real estate investing. Maybe it's their first investment, or maybe they're new to your market, and just being able to educate them that way.
You mentioned before in a previous call, a big focus for you are actually furnished rental spaces, just because of the tax benefits for W-2, employees. So for those that don't know, will you break down kind of on a high level what the opportunity kind of looks like there?
Yeah, I think there's no better real estate investment right now, at least in I'm talking about the Arizona, the Phoenix market. Obviously, it differs depending on where you're located. But the beauty of, everyone has a stigma and probably an opinion on Airbnb, short-term rental, furnished rentals. Maybe you're someone who doesn't like it, you don't like what it's doing. I don't think it's really making an impact on housing like everyone says. There's not that many Airbnbs out there. But what has certainly become very advantageous for any kind of investor is the bonus depreciation you can take from an Airbnb. And the reason you can do it from an Airbnb is because you are an active participant in that investment. So you have active investments and passive investments. And basically, the way that you are involved in that asset dictates with the IRS how you are able to take a depreciation deduction. And the difference between a active Airbnb, which we say 7 days or less on the average stay that you are actively participating in it, is you can do what's called a cost segregation study and bonus depreciate that property. So you look at depreciation, 27 and a half years is the average. If you just take a passive real estate investment where they depreciate it over that timeline, you actually accelerate those 27 and a half years and bring a ton of that depreciation up into the first year, some in your second year, some in your third year, and then it kind of tapers
That's
off.
huge. That's a game changer.
And the reason it's so critical is, like, as a real estate professional, I can do that with any property. It doesn't matter. However, if you have a W-2, let's say I'll just give you some of like my clients who've done this, engineers, doctors, bankers, where you have high income producing W-2s, you're looking at a huge tax liability. There's just no way around it. You get the worst deductions. You just have to pay the highest tax liability. With a short-term rental, you have the ability, because it's an active investment, to offset and use that bonus depreciation against your W-2 income. So if you're making $500,000, $700,000 a year, you can take an asset as a short-term rental and to get a $100,000, $120,000, $150,000 tax write-off because you bought a short-term rental. Can't do that with a single-family home that's a long-term rental. Very hard to do that with other real estate asset classes. And so tell me where you're getting that write-off anywhere else from the IRS, along with investing in real estate, building your wealth. And the really key thing, I think, with this is you only got to do it for a year. You only have to manage it yourself and keep it as a short-term rental for a year. So after that, if you want to, convert it to a long-term rental, totally fine. If you want to, after a year, hey, I'm very busy with my profession, my family, my hobbies, you can then hire a property manager. So it's a year. You got to be able to manage yourself. You got to do it as a short-term rental, but tremendous, benefit when it comes to tax time by going with that strategy.
For those that don't know, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that whole thing that Mason just went over again. There's so much power in that right there, and such a unique strategy that's all in the up and up and right in the code. And you can totally do this for yourself and put yourself in a position where you're keeping more of your money in your pocket, which is, really what the ultimate game is.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to do that, right? Nobody's looking to pay more to the IRS.
No one's super excited about paying the IRS. Yeah. So
if you're already thinking about investing in real estate, why not go with the best strategy, right? Why not go with the most advantageous strategy?
Well, I think to your point too, it's just education. People don't know what they don't know. And they might be earning a good income and they might be making great money, but they don't necessarily understand kind of those tricks that you can learn along the way to push that a little bit further. In your experience, what's the difference in the way you would underwrite or evaluate a furnished rental maybe versus a traditional long-term rental?
Yeah, a lot more variance. And I say that because with a long-term rental, we can usually pinpoint a market rent within $100, $150 minus plus $100, $150. So we can say this will rent for $2,000. It's very rare that that's going to go below $1,850. It's very rare that you're going to get $2,200 for it. It's a pretty tight window that you can have kind of confidence and assurance because there's so many comparables. The rental market's so, I guess, streamlined in the sense of you're not going to be able to just charge higher dollar for a similar property when the same one rented next door for that, $1,950. With short-term rentals, you get into, yes, it's a real estate investment, but you're getting into a hospitality business. And I think people forget that. And with that, there's a lot of room to grow and have a great product for the market. And there's also ways where you can cut corners and it shows. Think about it as a hotel, right? Every hotel room is kind of the same. Same size, a bed, a couch, whatever might be in there, a desk. However, you can charge dramatically different based off of the experience, what amenities come with the hotel, the overall look of the hotel. So when I'm underwriting, there's certain things that are fixed. Your payment's going to be, you have a good idea of how much your cleaners are going to cost. You can budget for the handyman. But then when it comes to, hey, what am I going to gross on this asset? We like to give, sometimes it's like a $20,000 variance because, hey, you can do really well and have high occupancy if you run this properly. Here's one that's doing X amount, mirror that. Here's also one that's not doing that, and you can see why. And so we like to kind of give case studies in a way of, here's one that's performing well, here's one that's not, here's what to mirror and match. And I would say the other way we try and underwrite it to make it even easier and give investors more confidence is we try to find properties that are already operating as Airbnbs, that already have financials and proven track records of, hey, this one is making 100 grand a year. You might not make exactly 100 grand, you might make more, but regardless, there's confidence in what the property has done to where an investor can look at that and say, okay, I think I can just kind of keep this ball rolling. It's already furnished. It already has a look. It's really just keeping the marketing and the hospitality of it in place.
Gotcha. So would you say that this would be for really any W-2 earner, or do they need to have a specific income level to come in at to really justify, doing this? And then follow-up question to that, if they don't have cash on hand to justify it, is this something that financing will also play a factor in where they can leverage that as well and be able to do what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think you want a little bit of buffer. I think that goes for any real estate investment. I'm not a big, hey, I've got 100K to my name, let's put it all into a property and nothing in reserves. I think you got to have some, and maybe a little bit more of a buffer with a short-term rental because it is seasonal, and so you're going to go through patterns. First year, especially if you're doing it yourself, might be a little bit lower because you don't have the reviews yet and you're kind of building up that track record in the community and kind of buffing out your wrinkles. But I think realistically, if you're like, hey, I have 25% to put down and I am ready for a real estate investment in median income, I still think it's worth it. Like a median price property here in the Valley is going to be around $500,000. I'd still rather, if I'm a W-2, go for the short-term rental. I'm probably going to make more. The thing I think that people need to take into account is it's active. It's going to take time. You're going to have things come up. You're going to have problems to solve. And that's more the preface I would put with an investor rather than the financial piece is, are you ready for that? Because you need to be in order to run this well.
No, that's really smart. That's great advice. So changing gears a little bit, you casually dropped that you did 38 transactions in the last 12 months, which in and of itself is just impressive. It's no joke. What did you do differently to kind of get you to that point? Did you build this over years, or was this kind of out of the chute just, man, we really struck gold here. I'm seeing momentum like crazy.
Yeah, I don't think about it too much as far as like, hey, this is the formula. I think I'm very thankful for my clients and I'm very thankful for their trust over like the last year, and each and every one of them, some local, some across the country, obviously has given me their trust and guidance in making it happen for them. I think when I think of like, if there's anything where it's like, hey, I'm doing 12 transactions and I want to do more, like what's the best way to do it? It really comes down to making sure people know who you are. And everyone kind of thinks that they are known in their local community, in their niche investment community, as I'm more of somewhat of an investment real estate agent. The reality is people will forget about you really fast and people don't know who you are. And so I try and communicate with my past clients as much as possible, right? Whether it be a home that they have purchased through me, a home they have sold through me, an investment. They obviously have stuff going on with that property. And so just kind of staying in touch with them and helping them solve problems as they come up, or even encouraging them as they're continuing to look. And then really just how many people, like I think if you're in the real estate space, there's a never ending list of people who eventually want to buy a home, eventually want to buy an investment property, or thinking about selling their home. And it's how well of a record are you keeping of all those people? And then how often are you communicating with them? And it's not weird. I'm not texting someone every day to be like, hey, are we ready to sell? Hey, are you ready to sell? Hey, are we ready to sell? But if you are able to kind of keep track of that list and just touching base once a month, if they're, getting more and more ready to go, even once a quarter, and just like, hey, what's going on? Do you guys need anything? Let me know how I can help. That stuff goes a long way. So I think it's that. And then if I were to say like one other thing, I think it's just more of everything is needed in order to do more and more transactions. And that comes from those conversations. It comes from social media. It comes from, hey, are there ways you can be affiliates with your niche to get more people? I mean, I had someone even just yesterday call me from ChatGPT. They were looking for an Airbnb realtor in Arizona from the East Coast. Never had
That's
that happen.
awesome.
Yeah, and like you kind of hear those stories. The first time I've actually had that happen, and I think it's because of a lot of the organic content that I put out surrounding that. But it just reinforces the need to just get more and more out there so that people know who you are. And I joke, I'm watching Owning Manhattan right now, which is Ryan Serhant's show on Netflix, and I love it. And it's like, it just gives me the confidence of like, I'm not doing a TV show. Think about the millions of people watching his TV show right now. And
Sure.
like, think about, yeah, it takes a lot of time and work to get out there, but like, that's the level of exposure that like is possible. And the more you kind of work towards that, it's only going to help your business. It won't hurt your business. There's no way it
Right.
can hurt your business, right? And so the worst thing it can do is nothing. And the best thing it can do is change your life.
Best thing you do is change your life. I like that. So speaking of, you're in the middle of a big shift. And from what I remember, you're going from just Mason, one man show, to building a team with a brokerage and adding admin help.
Yo,
What's driving that move for you? I mean, what's kind of the force behind it? Because you found success so far by yourself, but now you're taking on a team, which is a totally different animal. So
yo.
what's the motivation there with the change?
I'd say two things. One, I don't meet many people doing more transactions than me that are doing it all by themselves. Just plain and simple. And I think if you want to get to a spot where I see people who are doing 75 transactions in a year and doing 100 million in sales in a year, they have teams, they have admin, and it makes sense. Like I'm, I only have 24 hours in a day. I have an incredible family that I love spending time with. I love serving at my church and being involved there. I love spending time with people, and those are things I don't want to sacrifice for the sake of a number of real estate transactions or a dollar amount.
Yeah.
So the way to do that is to build out the team. And um, so yeah, I'm starting. That's going to think be a big part of 2026 because even now I can't be in two places at once, and there's certain times where I need to be in two places at once. And I think that's like the other side of the coin is like logistically, if you want to do more and more in volume, you literally cannot be in those places. And so it's kind of ripping off a band-aid because I think really once you get to a point where you're starting to do even to maybe 24 deals in a year, you're pretty capped out on time, probably more than you realize. And I think you try and just scrape by, scrape by, and scrape by. And I think if I were honest, this year there's certain misses in my business where I'm like, this is because I'm doing it myself. And I think I could be doing this better if I had a team around me. So that's been a huge part of the push. But yeah, it's something that I know I'm going to grow in personally and professionally over the next several months.
So who exactly are you looking for, and what would complement that for you to be able to, you be able to give that trust over? Because you've built a business for yourself, and it's a very protective personal thing, right?
Yeah,
You've had success, and you got to make sure that, yeah, you can't be in two places at once, but whoever the other person is that's representing you is an extension of you.
totally.
So who are you looking for? What qualities does that person need to have? And feel free to utilize this as a recruitment tool as well. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's two things. Like I think of it. So I've hired the an executive assistant who's basically going to, you know, we're still in the onboarding training phase, but essentially going to handle anything that is not client facing, at least right now, and then probably even some client facing things. And so like the goal of that is all the documents, all even like some of the personal stuff that like pulls me away from the business that like I don't enjoy, having someone else be able to do that in order to free me up to spend time with clients, be with my family, do kind of those other things that I want to do. So that's one element, and that's already in place. The other element is like starting a team with the brokerage. Um, Already onboarded two agents, and really the thing I'm looking at is this person. Obviously, they're going to be a little bit different, and every agent's different, but they have to be able to uphold the brand. And I think about it this way. This is kind of like my barometer of how I think through that is if I'm throwing big annual client event, which I want to do. I haven't done yet, and it's something I need to do. And I think of it as like an incredible like black tie event, you know, just very upscale, elegant. I want every agent part of my team to be able to interact with every single one of my clients and leave a positive impression. When those clients vary in such a degree from local family looking to move that I have a personal relationship with to big time investor from the Bay who's in town, and you know that's a very different client, right?
Sure.
And so that is kind of what I am gauging because I interact with real estate agents all day every day. We have a reputation for being rude. We have a reputation for not being able to read like social cues, and I think it's valid from just the way they interact with me. And so that's really the person I'm trying to bring in. We can learn the real estate piece. We can figure out how to market, how to lead generate, how to find properties. It's really that personal touch of, do I trust this person if they're going to be interacting with my clients, potentially working with my clients?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Changing gears a little bit and going into talking a little bit more about local economy and kind of helping clients. You brought up something that I think is really spot on. And it's not just affordability anymore. It's uncertainty that seems like it's killing decisions. How are you seeing that play out with your investors? And what are you kind of sometimes running into a little bit? And then how are you moving past that and handling that and letting the client kind of not just feel like they're leading the charge, but really owning the help that you're giving them?
Yeah. It's always hardest to make a decision in uncertainty. And anytime there's any uncertainty in the market, could be going up, could be going down, people freeze. They prefer a stagnant market. I think if I think of like the ideal real estate environment, it's home prices just going up 2 to 3% every year consistently on a perfect trajectory because
Right.
everyone feels like, okay, I know in 3 years what this is going to be worth. I know in 7 years what this is going to be worth. Even if it could be worth more in a volatile market, they'd still rather have the easy trajectory to read. And that's decision making from anyone in general. I think the piece you really have to strike, and I think it's different from a home buyer and an investor. I think home buyer, it's personal finances, individual decisions. Are you ready? Like we just moved because we needed more space. That the market means nothing to me when it comes to that, right? That's our everyday livelihood. I think that's how you have to think about it when you're buying a home. You
Yeah.
shouldn't wait. You shouldn't do it if you're not ready. You shouldn't wait if you are ready. I think it's a personal family life decision that needs to be done on your family timeline, not on a market timeline. If you're an investor, it's always hard to it's not even so much the real estate investment, it's letting go of your money. That is the hard part. It's always easier to keep money in your pocket and keep it in your bank account than putting it into a real estate property.
Right. Yeah.
It's just that's just the nature of people, like, and so it's really finding what is the reason we don't want to go through with it. And it's usually not always market related. There's usually something else going on that is kind of restricting that confidence in the investment. If you find a home run deal for your client, sure, one might not want to invest, but there's usually somebody else who's like, yeah, that's a great deal and I'm ready to do it. And so I think, I talk with people all day, every day, and by the time they talk to me, they're usually not ready to pull the trigger. It usually takes, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months of them seeing properties go through, seeing them get sold because they want to see, yeah, I'm interested in this property. they almost want to see 3 to 5 of those same properties sell at that price before they're ready. They want to see that confidence. So it's not all the same. I don't think there's any kind of like one answer that's going to help you push through those barriers. But remember, your clients are people. They have anxiety, they have financial decisions. And I think if you were in their boat, you're probably feeling the same kind of uncertainty. So it's just how do you help them work through that? How do you answer their questions to give them at least all the full picture to be able to make the right decision on their end?
No, it's good advice. And I think, for you, speaking to maybe some newer agents that are watching this or listening who want to move forward and want to work with investors, but they're struggling and they're not quite getting the traction that they need. What would be a piece of advice that you would give them? I mean, you said one of the most important metrics was how many meaningful conversations are you having? So would you say that it's that plus something else, or is this that alone would be where you would start?
I think that plus like free organic social media would be like the best way to do it. And I think if you're struggling, you really got to sit down and be like, how many hours am I committing to this? Be honest, right? Like, are you really spending 6 hours finding ways to connect to people? Because I can think of several even routes right now that I have not pursued of just shooting out messages to people who I know are actually interested in buying real estate. I just haven't really had time to reach out to them and try and start conversations. There's so many ways you can do it. And so I would start there. And I think what I would do is I would take a week, really dial in and write down how many conversations you had, really like keep track of it all do it in an Excel sheet. And if you're struggling and you got nothing else going on, you can do 100 a day. You can have at least 100 reach outs. That's super doable. And that would probably lead to at least 10 meaningful conversations, probably a lot more if you take a second and think, how do I actually try and get someone to respond to this?
So let's say they take that advice and it works,
Yeah.
but they're starting to attract investors and they're starting to kind of get into a place where they maybe are newer and they don't know what they're doing. Where would you say, hey, don't waste your time on this, really focus on this? That way they're using their time most efficiently.
Hmm. I would say, like, if someone says, hey, I'm going to wait 6 months or I'm not ready right now, don't keep barking up that tree. Put a calendar reminder in your phone, a couple months out, reach out to this person again and see if they're ready. I think a lot of it is get yourself organized to where if someone's like, yes, this is something I want to do, but I'm not really ready right now, don't just keep sending them properties. Like that's where you start to just kind of build out
Right.
your pipeline of buyers in the future. Even right now, like I have calendar reminders in my phone for March of next year, June of next year. So someone is like, hey, I have an investment property. The lease is up in August of next year. I'll think about selling then. Boom, I'm reaching out July 1st. Hey, is that lease up? Like trying to just start to build that out to where you can look with confidence of, hey, I have this list of people who said they're ready in 2026. This is like a great start I have. And yeah, not every single one of them is going to execute that, but are there a couple in there that are probably going to do it? You bet they will. And then I think the other way you can do it is start to I think email is such an underutilized, nurturing platform, if you will, that people just ignore. And I'm not talking about like hey, this is a company email, like, I don't know, the ones that go just to your spam, right? I don't even know how to
Right.
describe them. Like people send them out to you, you get them, right? Where you're getting them from companies, they go straight to your spam. They're like full of color, they're advertising something, it doesn't make sense, you never read it. I'm talking about, hey, normal text, a couple sentences, maybe a paragraph, send it out to everyone. Here's what I'm seeing in the market. Here's what I just closed on. Here's what I just helped my client achieve. Boom, boom, boom. Send it out. You would be shocked at how many people respond to that. And you'll be shocked at how many people eventually will contact you saying, I read all those emails. Because that's a way where you can just highlight what you're doing in the same way that social media does. And you're just highlighting what you're doing. You don't need to do it in a brag way, just like, hey, here's like a good example. Like, hey, I just helped someone find this furnished rental. Here's how much it's generating. Here's how much their projected cash flow is. Here's how much their estimated, cost segregation study is. Really cool deal. If you're interested in finding a furnished rental in the future, just let me know. And doing that a couple times a week as you're reaching out to people individually, think about how many people you're contacting then every single week. It's a great way to do it. And it's one that like I continue to utilize more and more and more.
Yeah, I think it's really smart. I think the casual email approach is it's much more personable too, because it feels like someone actually took the time to type it out. Doesn't feel like I just copied and pasted a MailChimp template
No.
and then just went about my merry way and checked the box for my action items for the day, right? And you're right. When I see big flashing colors and a whole sales pitch, I don't even bother reading it. It's just
Mhm.
get out of my inbox. But if it looks like Mason really wrote me an email, well, oh yeah, what's up, Mason? Like what's going on, man? And oh yeah, we were talking about that a while ago. Okay, yeah, so smart. And that, for people listening, that is fantastic marketing advice just in and of itself.
Yeah.
These days where we have a lot of really fancy tools, sometimes the basic stuff cuts through the noise and gets right to the person you want to talk to.
Yeah.
So
And conversion always happens in conversation. So as soon as someone responds to that
I like
email,
that.
boom, you just got a great conversation started in email. It's going to be documented of someone reaching out. Boom, there's one of your like important conversations that you can just kind of continue to build off of. The other thing I would say with all of that too, with like the email and like the reaching out to people, is like you got to get at like no one buys a house without seeing it realistically. So show if you don't have a ton of stuff going on, get if anyone wants to see a house, I don't care if they're not thinking about buying till next year, you show them that house and you give them a great tour and you spend time with them because that relationship also super important.
I think it's really valuable what you're talking about there, because I think a lot of people and even loan officers in my world miss this part of, well, it's not a deal right now, so I'm going to move on to something else. And I understand. I mean, we want to create a pipeline and get it closed, but those contacts at some point will be in a position where they can work with you, and they're going to work with whoever's top of mind at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can be consistent and just stay the course, and it doesn't take a whole lot of effort, you just got to be consistent with it. I've seen it in my business too, man. I agree completely. I think that's really smart. So back onto you for a little bit here. When it comes to your clients and them looking back 5 years after a transaction, what's your hope for them? How they view that transaction they did with you, or maybe share some reviews that you've had recently where you got some feedback and you're like, man, okay, this keeps me motivated. This keeps me going.
Yeah, it feels really good to get feedback that's not generic. I would say. I think I was just at a house showing with a client of mine. They hadn't bought anything yet. They came into town last month and they ended up, we drove around, saw a couple properties, nothing. They were back in town this week. We looked at one. And I think this is my favorite feedback. They said they were looking in a bunch of different markets, and I think they still are, but they're like, we really like you because you just give it to us very straight. There's no fluff, and you're not trying to puff up a property more than it is. So I'll tell people when I don't know something, and I'll tell them exactly what I think. And there's a really good that feedback of like, hey, we are looking in a ton of other markets. We talked to a ton of other real estate agents, and we really like that about you. I think is super important to me because it just gives me confidence that how I'm showing people properties and how I'm talking through real estate with them is working and is resonating with people. Because I think that's super important because you're gonna have a lot of you're gonna have more conversations that don't lead to anything than conversations that actually lead to a transaction. So in those ones where nothing ends up happening, you want to make sure that you're still giving people value and knowledge because
Yes.
who knows where that will go down the road. Sure, I hope you do everything else right. I hope you're providing good client experience and helping someone talk through the home process of buying or selling and being clear and concise. And there, I think those are kind of the baseline necessities for feedback from your clients. But are you standing out from other realtors that they're talking to in some regard? I think is super important.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So what's your definition of success? And this is a very open-ended question, but is it units in a year? Is it lifestyle, freedom? How do you define that personally?
Say it again.
How do you define success for yourself?
I I want my life to be one that honors God in everything that I do. Live by the Bible. I'm a Christian. That's the most important part of my life. And that then flushes out into everything else that I do, whether it be work, whether it be as a husband, whether it be as a father, with my clients, with how I spend my time, how I spend my money. And so success looks different in each one of those buckets.
Sure.
What I can tell you is I've not arrived in any of them. Yeah, you know what I mean? I wouldn't, if you were to ask me really honestly, like, do you think you're successful? I think I'm headed in the right direction in some, but I think that the being successful is about being on track in each of those facets of your life. You don't ever stop being a real estate professional who's, helping people, clients with big important decisions in their life.
I think that's smart. It was once said that success is often found in the pursuit of it. And, we put ourselves in a position. I totally know what you're talking about. I'm a father, husband, I'm a Christian too. And so when you have a certain standard that you set for yourself, you're never going to fully reach that. You're never. And we're oftentimes not always able to acknowledge how far we've come just because we're in the midst of it and we're so close to the canvas, we can't see the painting. So yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I always like asking that question because everyone's a little different, but I think it was probably one of the better answers I've had. So thank you so much for coming on today. Listeners, thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe for more in-depth real estate knowledge. We're going to put Mason's information here as well. So if you want to reach out to Mason, if you're interested in investment strategies, he is definitely the guy to talk to. Once again, I'm Jared Sawyer. Goodbye and take care.